In a quiet Nigerian town, a man of God was loved, trusted, even worshipped. But behind the altar, behind the smile, was a secret too dark for the pulpit. This is not just a story, it's a revelation. The story of Father John, the priest who turned his church into a scandal. Sit back, listen closely, and ask yourself, who really wears the cloth?
The sun hung low in the sky as Father John arrived at St. Matthew's Catholic Church in Agbor. His presence alone commanded attention. Tall, fair-skinned, and strikingly handsome, he was unlike any priest the town had ever seen. Women whispered among themselves, their eyes trailing his every movement as he stepped out of the black sedan sent by the diocese. Even the men couldn't deny his charisma. Father John had been transferred from a larger parish in Lagos, though no one knew why. His sermons were captivating, his voice smooth like honey, and his charm undeniable. From the first Sunday he took the pulpit, the congregation was mesmerized. The women, young, old, married, and single, felt something stir in them. Something they dared not name. But behind the sacred robes and the holy scriptures, Father John harbored secrets. He had weaknesses, desires that festered beneath his righteous facade. And in this new town, far from the eyes that once watched him closely, he felt a dangerous freedom. Sister Agnes, a wealthy widow in her late 40s, was the first to take an interest in him. She had been lonely since her husband's passing, and Father John's presence filled a void she didn't know still existed. She became his most devoted supporter, always the first to arrive for Mass and the last to leave. Then there was Cecilia, the young choir leader with a voice as angelic as her beauty. She had never paid much attention to priests before, but something about Father John's gaze made her stomach flutter. She lingered after rehearsals, hoping for just a moment alone with him. And there were others, Sister Amaka, a married woman whose husband barely noticed her anymore, young Veronica, barely out of secondary school, who blushed every time she saw him, and even some of the older nuns who found themselves drawn to his warmth. Father John saw it all. He recognized the longing in their eyes, the way they leaned in too closely when they spoke to him, the way their hands lingered when they greeted him. He knew temptation was creeping in, but he did not turn away. For now, he was still in control. But the fire he was playing with would soon grow into an inferno, consuming everything in its path. The confessional booth was dimly lit, the air thick with incense and secrets. Father John sat behind the wooden screen, listening as the parishioners poured out their sins. Most confessions were ordinary, petty lies, missed prayers, fleeting anger. But that evening, Sister Agnes' voice trembled as she spoke. "Father, I have sinned. The Lord is merciful." "Speak, my daughter," he responded, his voice calm and measured. There was silence. Then a heavy sigh. "I have had thoughts. About someone. Thoughts I shouldn't have." Father John felt his heartbeat quicken. He knew where this was going. "Thoughts alone are not a sin," he said carefully. "But if these thoughts consume you, you must turn to prayer." "I have tried, Father. But the more I pray, the stronger it gets. Every time I see him, my heart beats faster. My body longs for him." She was no longer speaking in vague terms. Father John swallowed hard, gripping the edge of his cassock. "Who is this man?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "You," she whispered. For the first time, Father John felt the weight of his own temptation pressing against him. He should have rebuked her, reminded her of her vows to God. Instead, he sat in silence, breathing in the heavy scent of her perfume. "Do you want me to leave the church, Father?" she asked softly. He should have said yes. But instead, his lips parted, and the words that came out would change everything. "No, stay." That night, the lines between holiness and sin blurred forever. The night was still, but inside the church quarters, Father John's heart pounded like a war drum. He sat alone in his dimly lit office, replaying Sister Agnes' words over and over again. "You." That single word had unlocked something dangerous inside him. A part of him wanted to dismiss her confession, to pretend it had never happened. But another part, one he had kept buried for years, was awakening. A soft knock at the door startled him. He hesitated, knowing who it would be. "Come in," he said. Sister Agnes stepped inside, her movements slow and deliberate. The candlelight flickered against her smooth skin, and for the first time, Father John saw her not as a parishioner, but as a woman. A lonely woman who had given herself to the church, only to find that it could not fill the emptiness inside her. "I should leave," she murmured, but she didn't move. Father John stood, his breathing uneven. "Agnes, we cannot." She took a step closer. "Then tell me to go, and I will." His lips parted, but no words came out. She was close now, close enough for him to inhale the sweet scent of her skin. When she placed a trembling hand on his chest, he did not pull away. And in that moment, Father John made a choice that would set fire to everything he had built. He reached for her. The fall had begun. The days that followed were a blur of stolen moments and whispered promises. Father John knew it was wrong, yet he could not stop himself. He and Sister Agnes met in the quiet corners of the church, in the secrecy of his quarters, in the very place meant for prayers and reflection. It was intoxicating. The thrill of secrecy, the danger of being caught, it made each touch more electrifying, each stolen night more intense. But the walls of a church have ears. And the whispers had already begun. Father John tried to convince himself that what he shared with Sister Agnes was a moment of weakness, something he could control. But temptation is a fire that, once ignited, does not easily die. It wasn't long before his gaze fell upon another woman, Cecilia, the young choir leader. She was different from Sister Agnes. Where Agnes was mature and competent, Cecilia was innocent, untouched by the weight of life's burdens. She was barely 20, with a voice so sweet it could soften even the hardest heart. One evening, after choir rehearsal, she lingered behind. The other singers had already left, their laughter fading into the night. "Father, your sermon last Sunday, it touched me," she said, her large eyes filled with admiration. Father John smiled. "That is the power of the Word of God." "Yes, but it is also you. You have a way of making it feel personal." There was a long silence. The way she looked at him, pure admiration mixed with something deeper, unsettled him. He should have walked away. He should have reminded her of his role as a priest. Instead, he stepped closer. "Cecilia, do you trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Then promise me something." His voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "Always keep our conversations between us." Cecilia did not understand the depth of what she was agreeing to. Not yet. But in time, she would. And by then, it would be too late to turn back. What started as a single forbidden relationship soon spiraled into something uncontrollable. The power Father John held over the women of St. Matthew's was undeniable. Sister Agnes believed she was special. Cecilia thought she had his heart. But they were not the only ones. Sister Amaka, a married woman, found herself seeking his attention. Veronica, the shy girl who cleaned the altar, blushed whenever he spoke to her. Even some of the older nuns felt drawn to him, though they would never admit it aloud. Father John knew how to play his part. He was careful, ensuring that each woman felt chosen, unique. But he was not as careful as he thought. Because secrets, no matter how well hidden, always have a way of coming to light. And soon, the walls of St. Matthew's would no longer be able to contain them. The confessional booth had become more than a sacred place, it was now a sanctuary for secrets, a place where forbidden desires were whispered under the guise of repentance. Father John sat in silence as the soft voice on the other side trembled with guilt. "Father, I have sinned." It was Sister Amaka this time, the married woman whose husband barely looked at her anymore. "Go on, my daughter," he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. I have feelings I should not have," she admitted. "For someone who is not my husband." Father John knew exactly who she meant. "The flesh is weak," he murmured. but the Lord is merciful. Then why do I not feel guilt, Father, she whispered. Why do I only feel longing? There was a heavy pause. On the other side of the screen, he could hear her breathing, could almost feel the weight of her unspoken desires pressing through the wooden barrier. Amaka, you must pray. Pray for strength. I have prayed, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But when I close my eyes, all I see is you. A shiver ran through Father John's spine. He should have told her to leave, to go back to her husband and never speak of this again. But instead, he found himself caught in the same web he had woven for others. His downfall was no longer a question of if, but when. Days turned into weeks, and whispers grew into rumors. St. Matthew's was no longer just a church, it was a breeding ground for secrets. Cecilia was the first to notice something was wrong. The nausea came in waves, unexpected and relentless. At first, she thought it was simply exhaustion from choir rehearsals, but when she missed her period, a dark realization settled over her. She sat in her small room, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Her breath came in short gasps. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. But there was only one man who could be responsible. Father John. That evening, she went to see him. She waited until the church was empty, then knocked on the door of his private quarters. When he opened it, she didn't speak. She simply held up the pregnancy test, her eyes wide with fear. Father John stared at it, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he exhaled. No one must know, he said. His words were not of comfort. Not of love. Just a command. And for the first time, Cecilia felt something she never had before. Doubt. Game. Father John had built his kingdom on secrecy, but kingdoms built on lies do not stand forever. Cecilia was not the only one. Before she could even come to terms with her pregnancy, she noticed something strange. Other women in the church had started looking different. Fuller faces. Tired eyes. Careful movements. Then it hit her. She was not the only one carrying Father John's child. The realization made her stomach turn. Had she been naive to think she was special? That she alone had captured his heart? One by one, she started noticing things. The way Sister Agnes avoided eye contact. The way Sister Amaka seemed quieter than usual. The stolen glances between Father John and other women. How many of them had fallen into his trap? And worse, how many of them were now carrying his sins within them? The truth was unraveling. And soon, there would be no way to hide it. Cecilia couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She wasn't just carrying a child, she was carrying a scandal. And she wasn't alone. Morning came, and with it, a newfound determination. She had to know the truth. After choir practice, she pulled Sister Agnes aside. Sister, can we talk? Agnes hesitated. Of course, my dear. Cecilia took a deep breath. I know. Agnes stiffened. Know what? I know about you and Father John. Cecilia's voice was barely a whisper, but the words hit Agnes like a slap. There was a long silence before Agnes finally sighed, looking away. It was a mistake. A mistake? Cecilia scoffed. Then tell me, sister, are you also carrying his child? Agnes' eyes widened in shock, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was enough. Cecilia's heart pounded. How many more of us are there? Agnes swallowed hard. More than you think. And just like that, Cecilia's world came crashing down. Father John had underestimated the women he had entangled in his sins. For months, he had skillfully manipulated each one, making them feel special, convincing them to stay silent. But now, the web he had woven was beginning to unravel. Cecilia wasn't the only one asking questions. Sister Amaka had grown suspicious too. She had noticed how Father John's affections were not reserved for just one woman. And now that she had missed her own period, fear gripped her heart. One by one, the women began to piece things together. The stolen glances. The whispered conversations. The sudden illnesses. It wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a crisis. And crisis had a way of exposing even the most carefully hidden sins. Father John had played a dangerous game. Now, the consequences were coming. And there would be nowhere left to hide. Father John sensed the shift in the air. The women he had once controlled so easily were changing. Their eyes, once filled with admiration and longing, now held something more dangerous, doubt. Cecilia was the first to break her silence. She had kept her secret for weeks, but the burden had become too heavy. She confided in Sister Amaka, and to her shock, Amaka had only nodded grimly. "You are not alone." Those words sent a chill down Cecilia's spine. She wasn't the only one. One evening, when the church was nearly empty, Cecilia gathered the women she suspected. Sister Agnes. Sister Amaka. Young Veronica. Even two married women, Grace and Esther. They sat in the dim candlelight of the church hall, exchanging nervous glances. "How many of us?" Cecilia finally asked. Silence. Then one by one, hands rose. Cecilia's stomach turned. Father John had not just broken his vows, he had created a web of deception so deep it had ensnared nearly half the women in the church. And now, the truth was too big to be contained. Father John's peaceful world shattered overnight. He had prided himself on control, on secrecy, but now the women were talking. And once a secret is shared, it's no longer a secret. It started with whispers, hushed conversations in the market, in the church courtyard, between women who had never dared question him before. Then came the looks. The side glances. The suspicion. One Sunday, as he stood at the pulpit delivering his sermon, he noticed it. The way the women sat together in one section, their eyes cold, their expressions unreadable. He could feel their silent judgment cutting into him. His hands trembled as he turned the pages of the Bible. "The wages of sin is death," he read aloud, his voice steady. But for the first time, the words felt like a prophecy. His own prophecy. And deep inside, he knew, his time was running out. "Let me know if you want me to continue right away. The tension is building, and the real fallout is about to begin." One evening, Father John sat in his dimly lit office, staring at the candle's flickering flame. He had always been careful. He had played his role perfectly, comforter, mentor, leader. Yet, somehow, everything was unraveling. A knock on the door made him sit up. "Come in." The door creaked open, and to his surprise, it was Sister Agnes. "Father," she said softly, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Father John relaxed slightly. If there was anyone he could still trust, it was Agnes. "What is it, my daughter?" he asked. She hesitated, then sighed. "The women are talking, Father. They know." His breath caught. "Know what?" "Everything." A cold wave of fear swept through him. He leaned forward. "And what are they planning?" Sister Agnes shook her head. "I don't know, but I do know this, whatever power you once had over them, it's gone." Father John clenched his jaw. No. He wouldn't lose control. He couldn't. But deep down, for the first time in his life, he felt something foreign creeping into his chest. Panic. Father John barely slept that night. Sister Agnes' words echoed in his mind, "They know." But how much did they know? And worse, what would they do with that knowledge? The next morning, he walked into the church, his usual confidence shaken. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it, the weight of their gazes. The women sat together again, just like last Sunday. Their eyes followed him, their expressions unreadable. Some of them, he knew, were carrying his child. Yet none of them spoke. He climbed onto the pulpit, gripping the edges with slightly trembling hands. Today, my children, we will talk about forgiveness. A bitter silence settled over the congregation. Cecilia shifted in her seat, crossing her arms. Sister Amaka exchanged a glance with Veronica. Even the older women, who usually nodded along to his sermons, remained stiff. He cleared his throat and continued. The Lord is merciful. No matter what we have done, if we come to him with a repentant heart, he will cleanse us. His voice was steady, but inside, fear gripped him. He wasn't preaching to them. He was pleading. And they knew it. After Mass, Father John retreated to his office, hoping for peace. But peace was a luxury he could no longer afford. A knock came. Sharp. Purposeful. Come in, he said. The door opened, and to his shock, Cecilia stepped inside. Alone. She closed the door behind her, locking it. We need to talk, Father. There was no shyness in her voice, no hesitation. What is it, my daughter? He asked, keeping his tone gentle. She stepped closer. I'm pregnant. Father John exhaled slowly. Cecilia, we must be careful. This is a delicate matter. Delicate? She repeated, laughing bitterly. Father, I am not the only one. His heart stopped. I know about the others, she continued. I know about Sister Agnes. Sister Amaka. Veronica. And I know about Grace and Esther, both married women. Should I keep going? Father John swallowed hard. The walls were closing in. What do you want? He asked finally. Cecilia leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We want the truth. And if we don't get it, she let the threat hang in the air. Father John's world was crumbling, and for the first time, he had no idea how to stop it. Father John had always been the one in control, the one who guided others. But now, faced with Cecilia's ultimatum, he felt something he never had before, powerless. He leaned back in his chair, forcing a calm smile. Cecilia, I understand your fears. But this is not something we should rush into. Let us pray. Don't, she cut him off, her eyes burning with quiet fury. Don't try to use the Bible to silence me, Father. That won't work anymore. Father John exhaled slowly. What do you want from me? We want you to take responsibility, she said firmly. No more secrets. No more lies. If you won't confess to the congregation, we will. A cold chill ran through his veins. Confessing to the church meant the end. The end of his reputation. The end of his position. The end of everything. He couldn't let that happen. I need time, he said, keeping his voice steady. I need to think. Cecilia studied him for a long moment before nodding. Fine. But not too much time, Father. The truth has a way of coming out, with or without you. She turned and walked out, leaving him alone with his darkest fears. That night, Father John paced in his room, deep in thought. He had always been careful, but he had underestimated these women. They had banded together, and now, they threatened everything he had built. He had two choices, confess and face disgrace, or silence them before they could expose him. But how? Threats wouldn't work. They were no longer afraid of him. Bribery? Some of them might take it, but not all. Then an idea struck him. If he could turn them against each other, break their unity, their threat would crumble. Sister Agnes was his best chance. She had always been loyal, always believed she was special to him. If he could convince her that Cecilia and the others were lying, that they were trying to destroy him out of jealousy, he might be able to divide them. Yes. That was the plan. Divide and conquer. And if that failed, he would have to consider more drastic measures. Father John wasted no time. If he was going to survive, he had to act swiftly. He called Sister Agnes to his office, ensuring they wouldn't be overheard. She entered cautiously, her face etched with worry. Father, what is happening? She asked. The church feels different. The women are talking. He sighed, putting on his most sorrowful expression. Agnes, my daughter, I am deeply troubled. There is a conspiracy against me. She frowned. A conspiracy? He nodded. Cecilia and some others, they have been spreading false accusations. Lies meant to destroy me. I fear jealousy has corrupted their hearts. Sister Agnes hesitated. She had known Cecilia for years. Could she really be lying? But Father. Cecilia said she is pregnant. Father John's face darkened with well-practiced disappointment. Agnes, think carefully. Have you seen any proof? Or are you simply taking her word for it? That made her pause. She hadn't actually seen anything. Just whispers, just rumors. I don't know, Father, she admitted, looking conflicted. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. You have always been faithful to me, Agnes. Don't let them turn you against me. I need you. A soft gasp escaped her lips. For years, she had believed she was special to him. The chosen one. Now, hearing him say those words, doubt began creeping into her heart, not about him, but about the others. Maybe they were lying. Maybe they were trying to bring him down. Father John could see the shift in her eyes. He had planted the seed of doubt. Now, all he had to do was wait for it to grow. The next Sunday, the tension in the church was suffocating. Cecilia, Sister Amaka, and the others sat together as usual, their silent rebellion growing stronger. But something was different this time. Sister Agnes wasn't with them. Instead, she sat alone, watching them with narrowed eyes. Father John smirked inwardly. His plan was working. After the service, as Cecilia and the women gathered in the courtyard, Agnes approached them, her arms crossed. I spoke with Father John, she said, her voice cold. Cecilia lifted her chin. And? He says you're lying. A stunned silence fell over the group. Agnes, you know the truth, Amaka said. We all do. Do I? Agnes shot back. Or are you all just bitter because he didn't choose you the way he chose me? Cecilia's stomach twisted. Father John's manipulation was working. Before she could respond, Agnes turned on her heel and walked away. Father John watched from a distance, a triumphant smile curling his lips. One by one, he would make them doubt each other. And if that didn't work, well, there were other ways to keep people silent. Cecilia and the other women stood frozen as Sister Agnes walked away, her words cutting deep. She's lying to herself, Amaka muttered. Father John has poisoned her mind. But what if she starts turning others against us? Veronica whispered, fear in her eyes. Cecilia clenched her fists. We can't let that happen. We have to stay united. That's the only way we can bring him down. But even as she said the words, she could feel it, doubt creeping into their group. Father John's plan was working. And if they weren't careful, they would fall apart before they even had a chance to expose him. Father John knew he had won a small victory, but it wasn't enough. If Cecilia and the others kept pushing, the truth would eventually come out. He needed to shift the focus. That Sunday, he stood before the congregation with a heavy heart. His voice was soft, filled with sorrow. My children, he began, I have recently been the target of grave accusations meant to tarnish my name and divide this holy church. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. There are those among us, he continued, who seek to destroy what we have built. But I tell you today, my conscience is clear before God. Some of the older women in the church murmured in agreement. We must not allow the devil to sow discord among us, he said, raising his voice slightly. Let us pray against falsehood. Against jealousy. Against those who would seek to tear this church apart. A loud amen erupted from the crowd. Cecilia's heart pounded. He was twisting everything. And worse, people were believing him. She glanced at Amaka, who looked just as shaken. What do we do now? Amaka whispered. Cecilia swallowed hard. They were running out of time. If they didn't act soon, Father John would bury the truth forever. Cecilia clenched her fists as Father John's voice echoed through the church. He was winning. Twisting the truth. Turning the people against them. She had underestimated him. As the congregation erupted in amen, and whispers of support for their beloved priest, she knew they had to act, now. She turned to Amaka and whispered, "We need to take this beyond the church." Amaka's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "If we stay quiet, he will destroy us. But if we go public, outside of St. Matthew's, he won't be able to control the narrative." Veronica leaned in. "You mean, take this to the bishop?" Cecilia nodded. "Or the press. Someone who can't be manipulated by him." A heavy silence settled over the group. This wasn't just about the church anymore. This was war. That evening, Cecilia and Amaka sat in Cecilia's small apartment, nervously staring at a piece of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. "Are we really doing this?" Amaka asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cecilia exhaled. "We have no choice." With trembling fingers, she dialed the number. A voice answered on the other end. "Diocesan office, how may I help you?" Cecilia gripped the phone tighter. "I need to report something, about Father John of St. Matthew's Parish." There was a pause. Then, the voice responded, "Go on." She took a deep breath. "He has been sleeping with women in the church. Many of them. Some are pregnant. And he is using his power to silence us." The line went deadly silent. Then, the voice said, "We will look into this matter." Cecilia hung up, her hands shaking. Amaka placed a hand on hers. "Do you think they'll believe us?" Cecilia's chest tightened. "I don't know, but at least we've started something." Neither of them knew that Father John was already aware of their move. And he was about to strike back. Father John sat in his office, his fingers drumming against his desk. He had just received word Cecilia and Amaka had gone outside the church. They had reported him. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "Foolish girls," he muttered. Did they think he had no influence beyond the church? That the diocese would turn against him so easily? No. He had powerful allies, ones who owed him favors. Reaching for his phone, he dialed a number. "Your Excellency," he said smoothly when the bishop answered. "There is a dangerous situation brewing at St. Matthew's. Some women, led by a few bitter troublemakers, are trying to destroy my name." He let out a heavy sigh, playing the part of the wounded, righteous man. "They are spreading false accusations, Your Excellency. I fear they may even involve the press. I need your guidance." The bishop was silent for a moment before responding, "These are serious claims, Father John. But I know your character. I will handle this matter personally." Father John's smile widened. "Thank you, Your Excellency. God bless you." As he hung up, he leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. Cecilia and the others thought they had won. But soon, they would learn, he controlled the game. The next morning, Cecilia woke up to a sharp knock at her door. Heart pounding, she rushed to open it. Sister Agnes stood there, her face pale. "Cecilia, we need to talk. Now." Cecilia stepped aside, letting her in. "What is it?" Agnes shut the door and turned to her, eyes filled with fear. "Father John knows you went to the diocese. And he's already moving against you." Cecilia's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Agnes lowered her voice. "The bishop has dismissed your accusations. He believes Father John. But that's not all, Father John is spreading rumors about you now." Cecilia stiffened. "What kind of rumors?" Agnes swallowed hard. "That you and Amaka are bitter ex-lovers trying to ruin him because he rejected you." Cecilia's hands curled into fists. "He's turning the church against us," Agnes continued. People are already whispering, calling you liars. Some even say you want to destroy the parish because of jealousy. Cecilia felt her throat tighten. He was winning. Again. But she refused to let him. Then we take this beyond the diocese, she said, her voice hard. If the church won't listen, the world will. Agnes' eyes widened. You mean, the media? Cecilia nodded. Yes. We go public. Let the whole country hear about Father John's sins. Agnes hesitated. This could ruin everything. Cecilia's gaze was firm. Good. Because if we don't stop him, he'll ruin us first. Cecilia wasted no time. If Father John thought he could silence them, he was wrong. She and Amaka met in secret later that evening, their faces tense with determination. We can't trust the church, Cecilia said. We need to go outside the system. Amaka nodded. The media, then. But how do we reach them? Cecilia pulled out her phone. I have a cousin who works with an online news platform. They love exposing scandals, especially ones like this. Amaka hesitated. This could ruin him. Cecilia's expression was hard. He deserves it. And if we don't do this, he'll destroy us instead. Taking a deep breath, she typed a message. I have a story that will shake the church. Call me. She pressed send. There was no turning back now. Father John sat in his office, sipping wine, when his phone buzzed. A message from one of his informants. Cecilia has gone to the press. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. His heart pounded. That foolish girl, he hissed. This was no longer a small rebellion. This was war. If the press got hold of this story, everything he had built, his reputation, his influence, his power, would be destroyed. He couldn't allow that. Picking up his phone, he made a call. I need you to handle something for me, he said coldly. The voice on the other end responded, What do you need, Father? Father John's eyes darkened. Make sure Cecilia stays silent. Cecilia was walking home that evening when she noticed something strange. A black car had been following her for the past few streets. Her heart pounded. She quickened her steps, but the car matched her pace, rolling slowly beside her. Then, suddenly, the window rolled down. A deep voice called out, Cecilia, we need to talk. She ignored it and walked faster. But the car screeched to a stop, and two men stepped out, blocking her path. You're making a mistake, one of them said. Father John wants this to end peacefully. Cecilia swallowed hard. Then tell him to confess his sins. The man chuckled darkly. That's not going to happen. But you can still walk away from this, if you know what's good for you. She clenched her fists. And if I don't? His smile faded. Then we can't guarantee your safety. Cecilia felt cold fear wrap around her. This was no longer just about exposing Father John. This was about survival. Cecilia ran all the way home, locking the door behind her. Her hands shook as she dialed Amaka's number. Hello? Amaka answered. They came after me, Cecilia whispered. Father John sent men to threaten me. There was silence on the other end. Then, Amaka spoke, her voice low and firm. We have to go public now. Before they try something worse. Cecilia took a shaky breath. I already sent the message to the journalist. He's willing to meet us tomorrow. Good, Amaka said. We can't back down now. No matter what. But even as Cecilia hung up, she couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was about to take an even darker turn. Father John was cornered. And a desperate man was the most dangerous kind. The next day, Cecilia and Amaka arrived at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Their eyes darted around nervously, scanning for any signs of danger. A man in a blue shirt and glasses was already seated in the corner, waiting for them. Are you Cecilia? He asked as they approached. She nodded. I'm David, from the People's Voice, he said. You said you have a story that will shake the church? Cecilia swallowed and leaned forward. It's about Father John of St. Matthew's Parish. He has been sleeping with women in the church, some married, some unmarried. Several are pregnant. And now he's trying to silence us. David's eyes widened slightly, but his expression remained professional. Do you have proof? Amaka pulled out a folder. These are messages he sent some of the women. Love notes, promises, and threats. David flipped through them, his brows furrowing. This is serious, he muttered. But you need to understand something. If we publish this, it's going to cause a storm. The church will fight back. And if Father John is as powerful as you say, he won't go down quietly. Cecilia's chest tightened. We know. But we can't let him keep getting away with this. David nodded slowly. All right. I'll run the story. But you both need to be careful. Once this goes public, you'll have a target on your backs. Cecilia glanced at Amaka. There was no turning back now. Do it, she said. That evening, Cecilia sat alone in her apartment, staring at her phone. David had promised to publish the article by morning. Her stomach churned with anxiety. Would the world believe them? Or would Father John's influence crush them before the truth could spread? A sudden bang at her door made her jump. Her heart raced. Slowly, she approached, pressing her ear against the wood. Silence. Then, another bang. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't safe. And by morning, when the story hit the headlines, things would only get worse. Morning arrived with a bang, both in the news and in Cecilia's world. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in. Calls from unknown numbers. The headline was everywhere. Shocking scandal, Catholic priest Father John accused of impregnating church members. Cecilia stared at the article, her pulse racing. It was all there, the testimonies, the messages, even a few anonymous women confirming the truth. We did it, Amaka whispered over the phone. The whole country is talking about it. But before Cecilia could respond, another call came in. Her heart dropped when she saw the name. Father John. She hesitated before answering. Cecilia, his voice was dangerously calm. I warned you. She swallowed. The truth had to come out. A long pause. Then, in a voice that sent chills down her spine, he said, You have no idea what you've done. The line went dead. Cecilia's hands trembled as she lowered the phone. She had exposed Father John. Now, she had to survive him. By noon, the Catholic diocese had released a statement. The church is aware of the false accusations against Father John. We stand by him until further investigations are concluded. Cecilia gritted her teeth as she read it. They're protecting him, Amaka said in frustration. They're making it look like we're lying. Meanwhile, in the church, Father John stood before his congregation, his face filled with pain. My children, he said, voice shaking, I have been falsely accused. The devil is working through bitter souls to destroy this holy house of God. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Some wept. Others cursed Cecilia's name. Father John clenched his fists behind his back. He would not fall. He would make sure of it. And as for Cecilia, she would regret ever crossing him. Cecilia barely had time to process the diocese's statement before her phone rang again. This time, it was David, the journalist. Cecilia, are you safe? He asked urgently. Her stomach twisted. For now. Why? Because Father John's supporters are on a rampage, David said. People are calling the station, threatening us for publishing the article. Some are demanding we take it down. Cecilia's grip tightened around the phone. And what did you say? That we don't silence the truth. Cecilia felt a flicker of hope. But then David's tone darkened. Listen, you need to be careful. I just got word that some men are looking for you. They were seen around your street. Cecilia's breath hitched. Father John wasn't just fighting back, he was coming for her. That night, Cecilia packed a small bag and left her apartment. She couldn't stay there anymore. Amaka met her at a hidden location, a relative's house far from the church. "We can't keep running," Amaka said as Cecilia entered. "What's our next move?" Cecilia exhaled shakily. "We push harder. If the church is covering for him, we expose them too." Amaka's eyes widened. "The entire diocese?" "Yes," Cecilia said, her voice firm. "If they want war, we'll give them war." But even as she spoke, she felt the weight of what was coming. Father John was powerful. The church was backing him. And the fight was far from over. Cecilia knew they needed more than just news articles to win this war. They needed legal action. The next morning, she and Amaka met with a well-known human rights lawyer, Barrister Kalu. He listened carefully as they told their story, his expression unreadable. "These are serious allegations," he finally said. "But without solid legal proof, witnesses willing to testify, medical records, anything concrete, it will be difficult to bring Father John down in court." Amaka frowned. "The women are scared." Kalu nodded. "I understand. But if they don't speak up, Father John walks free." Cecilia took a deep breath. "I'll convince them." The lawyer leaned forward. "Then we have a case. But be warned, once we file, Father John and his allies will do everything to destroy you." Cecilia met his gaze, determination burning in her eyes. "Let them try." Father John sat in his office, gripping the newspaper. The article had sparked outrage, but the church was holding strong. The bishop had assured him that they were working on discrediting Cecilia and Amaka. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. One of his most loyal church wardens entered, looking concerned. "Father, we have a problem." Father John narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" "Cecilia has met with a lawyer. She's gathering women to testify." A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "Then we need to act first." He picked up his phone and made a call. "Find something, anything, to destroy her credibility. If we can't silence her, we'll ruin her name." As he hung up, he leaned back, completely calm. Cecilia thought she was fighting for justice. But she was about to learn, he still controlled the game. Cecilia barely had time to settle into her hiding place before the attack started. The first blow came on social media. Fake accounts spread rumors that she had been caught in an affair with a married man. Then came the doctored pictures, poorly edited but enough to make people doubt her. Church members shared posts labeling her a liar, a desperate woman seeking revenge. Some even called her a Jezebel trying to destroy God's servant. Her phone buzzed nonstop with calls and messages. Some were from supporters urging her to stay strong, but most were threats. Amaka stormed into the room, holding up her phone. "They're turning people against you. Father John's supporters are everywhere." Cecilia's hands trembled. She expected resistance, but this? "What do we do?" Amaka asked. Cecilia inhaled deeply. "We keep going. Lies can spread fast, but the truth lasts longer." But deep down, she knew, the real war had just begun. Barrister Kalu had arranged a meeting with 3 women who agreed to testify against Father John. But by the next day, one of them, Ngozi, suddenly backed out. Cecilia called her immediately. "Ngozi, what happened? You were ready to speak up." Ngozi's voice was shaky. "I can't, Cecilia. My husband will leave me. My family is getting threats. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Cecilia clenched her fists. "They got to her," Amaka muttered. "They're scaring them into silence." Cecilia turned to Barrister Kalu. "What happens if we lose all our witnesses?" The lawyer's face was grim. "Then we lose the case." A cold fear settled in Cecilia's chest. Father John wasn't just trying to destroy her. He was making sure no one had the courage to stand against him. Cecilia knew that if Father John succeeded in scaring off the witnesses, the case would collapse. She needed to act fast. That night, she and Amaka met with the two remaining women, Grace and Evelyn, at a hidden location. "I know you're scared," Cecilia said, her voice firm but gentle. "But if we back down now, Father John will keep doing this to others." Grace wiped her tears. "My family has already warned me to stay out of this. They say I should leave everything to God." Evelyn looked away. "We are just ordinary women. He is powerful. What can we do against him?" Cecilia leaned forward. "You are stronger than you think. He expects us to be silent. That's how he wins. But if we stand together, he can't silence all of us." A heavy silence filled the room. Then, slowly, Evelyn nodded. "I'll testify." Grace took a shaky breath. "Me too." Hope flickered in Cecilia's heart. The fight wasn't over yet. The next day, Cecilia received an unexpected call from the bishop himself. "My daughter," his voice was smooth, calm. "We need to talk." She hesitated, then agreed. An hour later, she sat across from the elderly bishop in his grand office. "Cecilia," he began, folding his hands. "You are causing great damage to the church." Cecilia's jaw tightened. The damage was done the moment Father John betrayed his calling. The bishop sighed. "These things happen. No man is perfect. But bringing shame to the church, do you think God will bless that?" Cecilia stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to stay silent?" "I want you to reconsider your path," he said smoothly. "For your own good. Walk away, and we can make this all disappear." Her heart pounded. This was no longer just about Father John. The entire church was protecting him. She stood. "I won't be silent." The bishop's smile faded. "Then may God have mercy on you." Cecilia walked out, her hands shaking. She had made her choice. Now, she had to be ready for war. That night, Cecilia felt uneasy. She had been careful, changing locations, avoiding the same routes, but something felt off. As she walked toward Amaka's car, parked a short distance from their safe house, she glanced over her shoulder. The street was empty. Yet the hairs on her neck stood up. She quickened her pace, reaching for the car handle. A strong hand grabbed her from behind. She gasped, struggling as a deep voice whispered in her ear, "You should have listened to the bishop." Panic surged through her veins. She kicked, twisting violently, managing to break free for just a second. "Run!" Amaka's voice screamed from somewhere nearby. Cecilia bolted. Footsteps thundered behind her. A car door flung open, Amaka shouting, "Get in!" She dived inside, slamming the door as Amaka sped off. Breathless, Cecilia turned to look back. A dark figure stood in the shadows, watching them disappear. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. They wanted her gone. Amaka didn't stop driving until they reached the outskirts of town. They sat in silence, their chests rising and falling heavily. "They tried to take you, Cecilia," Amaka finally whispered. "This is beyond threats now." Cecilia clenched her fists. "If they think this will scare me into stopping, they're wrong." Amaka shook her head. "You don't understand. These people are dangerous. They won't stop until..." "Until what?" Cecilia snapped. "Until I'm dead? Then let them come." Amaka grabbed her hands. "No. We don't wait for them. We hit first." Cecilia blinked. "What do you mean?" Amaka exhaled sharply. "We go live. A press conference. No more anonymous articles. No more hiding. We stand in front of the cameras and tell the world everything." Cecilia's breath caught in her throat. This would be it. No more turning back. A direct attack against the most powerful institution in the country. "Let's do it," she whispered. And with that, the battle lines were drawn. Tomorrow, the world would hear their voices. And Father John would have nowhere to hide. The next morning, Cecilia and Amaka stood before a packed hall filled with journalists, cameras flashing from every direction. The atmosphere was tense, electric with anticipation. Barrister Kalu stood beside them, adjusting his glasses. "Are you ready?" he asked in a low voice. Cecilia's heart pounded. No more hiding. No more silence. She stepped forward to the microphone. "My name is Cecilia Okafor," she began, her voice clear and steady. "And I am here today to expose the truth about a man who has used his position as a priest to manipulate, abuse, and silence the women of his church." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. For years, Father John of St. Matthew's Parish has taken advantage of vulnerable women, married and unmarried, impregnating them and using his influence to cover his sins. Gasps echoed across the room. Amaka took the microphone next. "We have testimonies. We have evidence. And we are calling on every woman who has suffered under this man's abuse to come forward. We will not be silenced." The reporters fired questions. "Do you have proof? Aren't you afraid of retaliation? Is the church protecting him?" Barrister Kalu took the mic. "We are filing a formal case against Father John and those who have helped cover his crimes. The truth will come to light." Just then, a voice from the crowd shouted, "Lies!" Everyone turned. A group of church members, led by a furious-looking man, stood at the back, chanting, "This is an attack on the church. They are agents of the devil." Security rushed in as chaos erupted. Cecilia's hands trembled as she watched the battle unfold. They had spoken. Now, the war had truly begun. Within hours, the press conference was everywhere. News channels played clips on repeat. Social media exploded. Some called Cecilia a hero. Others branded her a liar. The Catholic diocese released a statement. "We acknowledge the serious accusations against Father John and will conduct an internal investigation. However, we urge the public not to rush to judgment." Cecilia threw her phone down in frustration. An internal investigation? They're still protecting him. Amaka sighed. They're buying time, hoping people will forget. But then Barrister Kalu's phone rang. He picked up, listening for a few moments before turning to them with a grim expression. "Father John has been placed on temporary leave," he said. Cecilia sat up. "That means?" "It means he's scared. But this isn't over." Cecilia exhaled. The storm was raging. And she was standing right in the eye of it. Father John paced the dimly lit room, his hands clenched into fists. He had been ordered to step down temporarily, a ridiculous move meant to appease the public. But he knew the truth. Cecilia was winning. His phone buzzed. He snatched it up. "What's the situation?" A deep voice answered, "Bad. Some women are coming forward. There's a growing movement online calling for your arrest." Father John's jaw tightened. "And the bishop?" "He's distancing himself. If this case gains more traction, they'll throw you under the bus to protect the church." Rage boiled in his chest. "I built that church. I made them believe. And now they abandon me?" His grip tightened on the phone. "Find something on Cecilia. Anything. I want her reputation destroyed before this case goes to court." "Already working on it, Father." Father John ended the call and sat down heavily. They wanted war? He would give them one. Cecilia knew Father John wouldn't stay silent for long. But she wasn't prepared for what came next. The news broke late that evening. New revelation: Cecilia Okafor, the woman accusing Father John, allegedly had an affair with a married church elder. Cecilia's heart stopped. What? She clicked on the article. It was filled with lies, claims that she had seduced a married man, that she had a history of targeting church leaders. Fake screenshots of WhatsApp messages were attached as evidence. Social media exploded. So she's not as innocent as she claims. This is why she wants to bring Father John down. Cecilia's hand shook as she scrolled. Amaka burst into the room, phone in hand. This is a setup. We need to respond. Cecilia closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. If we panic, he wins, she said. Amaka frowned. So what do we do? Cecilia opened her eyes, fire burning in them. We fight back with the truth. She grabbed her phone and began typing. To those who believe the lies against me, I have one thing to say, I will not be silenced. The truth will prevail. The real predator is Father John, and justice is coming. She hit send. The battle was far from over. And she would not back down. Cecilia's post spread like wildfire. Supporters flooded the comments, calling out the smear campaign. We stand with you, Cecilia. Father John's defenders are desperate. The truth will win. But the opposition was strong too. She's just a bitter woman. Why now? She just wants attention. Amaka paced the room. We need real proof, Cecilia. Something undeniable. Cecilia's mind raced. Then it hit her. The women. If more of them speak publicly, the lies won't hold. Amaka nodded. We need someone brave enough to go on record. Cecilia scrolled through her contacts, her heart pounding. Then she made the call. Evelyn, I need you to do something bold. Silence. Then Evelyn sighed. I'll do it. The next day, Evelyn sat in front of a camera. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. Father John manipulated me. He promised love, then abandoned me when I got pregnant. I am not the only one. The video went live. And the internet exploded. Father John slammed his fists on the table. She named me publicly? His ally on the phone sighed. It's bad, Father. People are believing her. He gritted his teeth. What's the bishop saying? They're panicking. If another woman comes forward, they'll have to take real action against you. Father John's breath came hard and fast. He couldn't let that happen. Find a way to silence her. I don't care how. The call ended. He stood, staring at his reflection in the window. He had controlled his world for so long. But now, it was slipping away. And he was willing to do anything to get it back. Evelyn's confession sent shockwaves through the community. More news outlets picked up the story, and the pressure on the church intensified. But with the truth now out in the open, danger lurked in every shadow. Late that night, Evelyn received a chilling message. Take down the video, or you won't live to regret it. Her hands trembled as she stared at the anonymous number. Then, just as she was about to show Cecilia, her power suddenly cut off. A loud thud sounded outside her window. Her breath hitched. Someone was watching. She grabbed her phone and called Cecilia. Evelyn? Cecilia answered groggily. Cecilia, someone is outside my house. A long silence. Then. Get out. Now. Cecilia and Amaka raced through the dark streets, their hearts pounding. We should call the police, Amaka whispered. Cecilia shook her head. You really think they'll protect her? We need to get to her first. They arrived at Evelyn's house to find her crouched in the shadows near the back door. They're still out there, Evelyn whispered. Amaka peered into the darkness. A figure stood near the gate, motionless. Watching. Who sent them? Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cecilia didn't need to guess. Father John was getting desperate. Come on, she urged. We need to go. They slipped through the back, hurrying into Amaka's car. As they drove off, Cecilia looked back. The figure had disappeared. But she knew this wasn't over. Father John had just made his next move. And it was only going to get worse. By morning, Evelyn was safely hidden in a secure location, but the fear lingered. She paced the small room, glancing at the locked door every few minutes. Cecilia sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone. The video was still trending. News anchors debated the scandal, while online supporters demanded Father John's arrest. Then a message popped up. Unknown number, you can still walk away, Cecilia. This is your last warning. Cecilia exhaled sharply. They're trying to break me. Amaka frowned. That means they're scared. But before Cecilia could respond, another notification appeared. Breaking news, Bishop suspends Father John indefinitely pending investigation. Cecilia's heart leaped. They finally acted, she whispered. Amaka grinned. We did this, Cecilia. He's losing his power. But Cecilia wasn't celebrating yet. She knew Father John. And a wounded predator was the most dangerous kind. Father John sat in a dimly lit room, his face shadowed with rage. Suspended. Humiliated. And all because of Cecilia. His contact spoke cautiously. The bishop is considering defrocking you. If that happens. It won't happen, Father John snapped. I won't let them destroy me. His hands tightened into fists. Cecilia thinks she's won. But I have one last move to play. He pulled out his phone and dialed. I want her alone. No Amaka. No lawyer. Find a way. The man on the other end hesitated. That's risky. Just do it, Father John growled. A cruel smile played on his lips. If he was going down, Cecilia was coming with him. Cecilia's phone buzzed. She picked it up, frowning at the unknown number. Hello? A woman's voice, soft and trembling, came through. Sister Cecilia, please. I need help. Cecilia sat up. Who is this? My name is Joy. Father John, he hurt me too. But I'm scared. I can't go to the police. Can we meet? Please. I don't trust anyone else. Cecilia's heart pounded. Another victim. Of course. Where can we meet? St. Luke's old mission house. Behind the church. Please come alone. If they see me with anyone, they'll know I talked. Cecilia hesitated. Something felt off. But if this woman was real, she needed help. All right, she said. I'll be there soon. As she hung up, Amaka walked in. Who was that? Cecilia hesitated. A victim. She wants to talk. Amaka's eyes narrowed. Where? St. Luke's mission house. Amaka froze. Cecilia, that place has been abandoned for years. A chill ran down Cecilia's spine. Had she just walked into a trap? Despite Amaka's protests, Cecilia drove toward the mission house, her heart pounding. The area was deserted, the building's old wooden doors barely hanging on their hinges. She stepped inside, her phone clutched tightly. Hello? She called. Silence. Then. The door slammed shut behind her. Cecilia whirled around, but before she could react, a hand grabbed her from behind. She struggled, but a rough voice hissed in her ear. You should have stayed quiet. A cloth covered her mouth. A sharp scent filled her nose. Darkness swallowed her. And then, nothing. Cecilia's head throbbed as she slowly regained consciousness. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of dust and decay. Her wrists ached, tightly bound behind her. She blinked, adjusting to the dim light. She was in a small, abandoned room. Cracked walls. A single flickering bulb overhead. And in the shadows, sitting calmly in a chair, was him. Father John. Finally awake? His voice was smooth, almost amused. Cecilia's stomach twisted. What do you want? She hissed. Father John leaned forward, his fair skin almost ghostly in the weak light. You should have walked away, Cecilia. You should have left this alone. Cecilia's heart pounded, but she refused to let fear show. People know I'm missing. If you hurt me, you'll only destroy yourself faster. He chuckled. Hurt you? No, 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 Cecilia. I'm offering you a deal. She narrowed her eyes. End this crusade. Take back your accusations. Tell the world you were wrong, and I'll let you go. Cecilia let out a short laugh. You still think you can manipulate me? Father John sighed. I was hoping you'd be smart about this. Then his expression darkened. Because if you don't, I promise, you will regret it. Cecilia forced herself to remain calm. She knew his type, men who thrived on fear. She wouldn't give him that power. What if I say no? She challenged. Father John smirked. Then your little friends, Amaka, Evelyn, even your lawyer, might find themselves in unfortunate situations. Cecilia's pulse raced. He wasn't bluffing. Father John stood, adjusting his crisp white shirt. Think carefully, Cecilia. You have until tomorrow morning. He turned to leave. Oh, and don't try anything foolish. No one knows where you are. No one is coming for you. The door slammed shut. Cecilia took a deep breath. No one was coming? She wasn't so sure about that. Because if she knew Amaka, she was already on the way. Amaka paced back and forth, her hands trembling as she redialed Cecilia's number for the 10th time. Still no answer. Something was wrong. She should have been back by now, Amaka muttered. Evelyn, sitting across from her, rubbed her arms anxiously. You don't think? I know, Amaka cut in. She's in trouble. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her car keys. Where are you going? Evelyn asked. To find her. Evelyn's face paled. But we don't even know where she is. Amaka. Amaka gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing. She had no solid leads, but her gut told her Cecilia was in danger. Then she remembered St. Luke's old mission house. That was the last place Cecilia had mentioned. Evelyn sat beside her, nervously scrolling through her phone. Maybe we should call the police. Amaka shook her head. And tell them what? That a corrupt priest might have kidnapped her? They'll probably warn him before doing anything. Evelyn swallowed hard. Then what do we do? Amaka's grip tightened. We find her ourselves. She pressed her foot on the gas, speeding towards St. Luke's. Time was running out. Cecilia sat still, forcing herself to breathe evenly. She needed to think. Her wrists were tightly bound, but as she wiggled her fingers, she felt something sharp beneath them. A nail. Rusted. Protruding from the wooden chair. Her pulse quickened. She started rubbing the ropes against the nail, careful not to make a sound. Footsteps echoed outside. A voice murmured. Make sure she doesn't try anything stupid. If she resists, we'll handle it our way. Cecilia didn't stop. Her only chance was to get out before they handled anything. The ropes were fraying. She just needed more time. Amaka parked a safe distance from St. Luke's, her heart hammering. The place was dark and eerily silent. Are you sure she's here? Evelyn whispered. No, Amaka admitted. But we'll find out. She popped open the glove compartment and pulled out a small can of pepper spray. If we see anyone, don't hesitate, she said. Evelyn nodded, swallowing her fear. They moved carefully, sticking to the shadows. Then Amaka froze. A black SUV was parked outside the mission house. Someone was inside. Watching. Her stomach dropped. They were not alone. Amaka pulled Evelyn behind an old wall, her breath shallow. They're guarding the place, she whispered. Evelyn peeked at the SUV. The driver sat motionless, but they could see the faint glow of a cigarette. If Cecilia's inside, we have to get past him, Evelyn said. Amaka's mind raced. They couldn't fight him head-on. They needed a distraction. Then she spotted a pile of broken glass and bricks nearby. Stay here, she whispered, grabbing a brick and creeping toward the far side of the building. She took a deep breath, then hurled the brick into the darkness. Crash! The sound echoed. The man in the SUV jerked upright, cursing. A few seconds later, the car door opened. He stepped out, gun in hand. Who's there? He barked, moving toward the noise. Amaka seized the moment. She motioned to Evelyn, now. They sprinted toward the entrance while the guard was distracted. The door was unlocked. They slipped inside. Now, they just had to find Cecilia, before it was too late. Cecilia's wrists burned, but the rope was finally giving way. Just a little more, she whispered. Then, a sharp snap. Her hands were free. Her heart pounded as she worked on her ankles, but she had to move fast. The voices outside were growing louder. Then she heard footsteps. Someone was coming. No time to think, she lunged for a rusted metal pipe on the ground and pressed herself against the wall. The door creaked open. A tall man stepped inside. You better be ready to listen. Cecilia swung the pipe with all her strength. It crashed into his head. He crumpled to the ground. Breathing hard, Cecilia grabbed his phone and ran out of the room, straight into Amaka and Evelyn. Cecilia! Amaka gasped. Cecilia's eyes widened. You came for me. Of course we did, Evelyn said. Now let's get out of here. But before they could move, a familiar, chilling voice echoed down the hallway. Going somewhere? Father John stood there. A gun in his hand. And murder in his eyes. Cecilia, Amaka, and Evelyn froze as Father John stepped closer, his gun aimed directly at them. His face was eerily calm, but his eyes burned with fury. You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? He said, shaking his head. You had to keep pushing, keep digging, until you forced my hand. Cecilia clenched her fists. Your hand? You did this to yourself, John. You thought you were untouchable, but the truth is out now. Father John chuckled darkly. Truth? Do you think truth matters? People believe what they want to believe. And by the time this night is over, you three will be nothing but a tragic mystery, lost, forgotten. Evelyn trembled. You wouldn't. Father John raised the gun. Oh, but I would. A tense silence filled the air. Then, a sudden crash echoed from outside. The SUV's alarm started blaring. Father John's head snapped toward the sound. It was the only opening they needed. Cecilia lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. The gun fired, a deafening bang, but the bullet missed. Amaka and Evelyn tackled him, struggling to wrestle the weapon from his grip. Father John was strong, but 3 against 1? He didn't stand a chance. The gun clattered to the floor. Cecilia grabbed it and pointed it at him. Breathing hard, she glared at him. Now let's see how you like feeling powerless. Father John lay on the floor, panting, his once pristine white shirt stained with dust and sweat. For the first time, he looked afraid. Cecilia kept the gun trained on him as Amaka reached for his phone. She quickly dialed the police. We have Father John. Come now, St. Luke's Mission House. Father John's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. But there was none. You think this will change anything? He spat. I have friends, powerful ones. You won't win. Cecilia stepped closer, her voice steady. Your power died the moment you underestimated us. Minutes later, sirens blared in the distance. Father John swallowed hard. The police had arrived. And his reign of terror was finally over. Red and blue lights flooded the abandoned mission house as police cars screeched to a stop. Officers poured out, guns drawn. Amaka stepped forward, raising her hands. We called you. He's inside. The officers rushed in. Father John, still on the floor, stared at Cecilia with pure hatred. You think this is over? He whispered. You think prison will stop me? Cecilia didn't flinch. You won't hurt anyone ever again. Two officers grabbed Father John by the arms, yanking him to his feet. John Okafor, you are under arrest for multiple counts of sexual misconduct, assault, and attempted murder, one of them said, handcuffing him. Father John thrashed. No. You don't understand. I'm a man of God. Cecilia shook her head. No, John. You're just a man who thought he was untouchable. As the officers dragged him outside, a crowd had already gathered. People whispered, pointed, and recorded with their phones. The great Father John was no longer a revered priest. He was just another fallen man. The news of Father John's arrest spread like wildfire. Every news station covered it. Social media exploded with reactions, some in shock, others furious, and many relieved that justice was finally being served. At the hospital, Cecilia, Amaka, and Evelyn sat together, bandaged but alive. We did it, Evelyn whispered, her voice still shaky. Amaka exhaled. He's gone. Finally. Cecilia, however, remained silent, staring out the window. What's wrong? Amaka asked. Cecilia sighed. It's just, how many more are out there? How many other Father Johns are getting away with it? Evelyn squeezed her hand. We can't stop all of them, Cecilia. But we stopped him. Cecilia nodded. Maybe this was just one battle. But it was a victory. And she knew one thing. She would never be silent again. Weeks passed, but the firestorm surrounding Father John's case refused to die down. His arrest had shaken the entire diocese. Many of his former supporters turned against him, while others insisted he was being framed. But the evidence was overwhelming. Victims began stepping forward, one by one. Married women, young girls, each telling their own horrifying stories. Cecilia watched the news every day, her stomach twisting as new revelations surfaced. He manipulated all of them, Amaka said one evening. And he still thinks he can walk free. Cecilia wasn't so sure. Because Father John had powerful connections. And men like him didn't go down without a fight. The trial was coming. And the real battle was just beginning. Father John's lawyers were ruthless. They claimed the women were lying. That they were bitter ex-lovers trying to destroy his reputation. This is a witch hunt, his lead attorney declared. My client is an innocent man, a victim of malicious gossip. Some members of the church believed him. Others weren't so sure. But Cecilia knew the truth. She knew the real Father John. And she was ready to take the stand. The courtroom was packed when Cecilia was called to testify. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Father John sat across from her, wearing his usual calm expression. But his eyes, they were filled with cold hatred. The prosecutor approached. Please state your name for the court. Cecilia Nwosu. And what is your relationship with the defendant? Cecilia turned to face Father John directly. He was my priest. My mentor. And the man who tried to destroy my life. A stunned silence filled the room. Father John's smirk faded. For the first time, he looked nervous. Cecilia lifted her chin. She wasn't afraid anymore. It was time to tell the world everything. Cecilia sat upright in the witness stand, her heart pounding but her voice steady. The prosecutor stepped closer. Cecilia, can you tell us what happened between you and Father John? She took a deep breath. He used his position as a priest to take advantage of women. He made them believe he was their protector, their guide. But behind closed doors, he manipulated them, seduced them, and when they resisted, he threatened them. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Father John's lawyer shot up. Objection. Speculation. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Cecilia locked eyes with Father John. He made me believe I was crazy. That no one would believe me. That he was too powerful to fall. The prosecutor nodded. And when you tried to expose him? Cecilia's voice hardened. He kidnapped me. He threatened to kill me. But he failed. The courtroom was silent. Even Father John looked shaken. But his lawyer wasn't done yet. Miss Nwosu, he said smoothly, standing up. You claim my client seduced women. But isn't it true that many of these women willingly entered relationships with him? That they pursued him? Cecilia clenched her fists. They were vulnerable. He used his power to control them. Or, the lawyer said with a smirk, did they regret their choices and decide to ruin a man's life out of spite? Cecilia swallowed. She had expected this. Now, it was time to shut it down. Regret, she said coldly. Tell me, does regret explain the married women whose homes he destroyed? The teenagers he preyed on? The threats? The violence? If you think that's regret, then maybe you're no better than him. The lawyer stiffened. The prosecutor smiled. The judge nodded. Answer the question, counselor. The defense attorney sat down, face tight with frustration. Cecilia had won this round. But the trial wasn't over yet. Cecilia's testimony sent shockwaves through the courtroom. More women stepped forward, their voices shaking but firm. He told me I was special. He said my husband didn't love me, but he did. When I tried to leave, he made me feel like I was the sinner. I was only 17. Each testimony chipped away at Father John's power. But he still had one last card to play. And it was about to be revealed. The courtroom was tense as the prosecution rested its case. Father John's lawyer stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, the defense would like to call its next witness. The doors swung open. A woman in a long, modest dress stepped in. Gasps rippled through the crowd. It was Mrs. Adewale, the bishop's personal assistant, and one of the most influential women in the church. She took the stand, looking calm and composed. Please state your relationship with the defendant, the defense attorney said. Father John is a good man, she said firmly. A man of God who has been falsely accused by bitter, sinful women. Murmurs erupted in the courtroom. Cecilia's stomach twisted. This was bad. Mrs. Adewale continued, her voice filled with conviction. These women wanted him. They threw themselves at him. And now that their secrets have been exposed, they are trying to destroy his reputation. The defense attorney nodded. In your opinion, why would they lie? Mrs. Adewale folded her hands. Jealousy. Guilt. Maybe even greed. Cecilia clenched her fists. Father John smirked. The jury looked uncertain. The tide was turning. Cecilia had to do something. Cecilia leaned toward the prosecutor. We need to expose her. She knows something. The prosecutor nodded and stood. Mrs. Adewale, how long have you worked with Father John? Over 10 years, she replied proudly. So you claim to know him well? Very well. Then tell me, did you know about the secret bank account in his name? The one used to pay off multiple women? The courtroom went silent. Mrs. Adewale's confidence wavered. I don't know what you're talking about. The prosecutor smiled and held up a document. This is a record of hush money payments made to victims. Would you like to explain why Father John had this account? Father John's smirk vanished. Mrs. Adewale's face went pale. The courtroom exploded. The truth was finally out. Mrs. Adewale shifted in her seat. Her hands trembling. I don't know anything about this, she stammered. The prosecutor wasn't backing down. Then why is your signature on one of the transactions? Gasps filled the courtroom. Cecilia leaned forward. They got her. Father John's lawyer stood up quickly. Objection. This is irrelevant. Overruled, the judge said, his tone firm. Mrs. Adewale swallowed hard. I was just following orders, she finally admitted. I didn't know everything. The prosecutor stepped closer. But you knew something. You helped cover up his crimes, didn't you? Tears welled in Mrs. Adewale's eyes. And then, the words that sealed Father John's fate. Yes. Yes, I did. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Father John's lawyer whispered furiously in his ear, but the priest didn't seem to hear him. He just stared at Mrs. Adewale, betrayal, rage, and panic flashing in his eyes. The prosecutor turned to the jury. You've heard it yourself. The truth can no longer be denied. This man abused his power, preyed on the vulnerable, and tried to silence his victims. But no more. Father John shot to his feet. This is a lie, he shouted. I am a man of God. Sit down, Mr. Okafor, the judge ordered. But for the first time, no one in the courtroom looked at Father John with reverence. They only saw him for what he truly was. A predator. A liar. And soon, a prisoner. The courtroom was silent as the judge turned to the jury. Has the jury reached a verdict? A middle-aged man stood. Yes, Your Honor. Father John sat stiffly, his hands gripping the table. His once pristine priestly robes were wrinkled, his face pale. Cecilia held her breath. The judge nodded. Proceed. The jury foreman unfolded a piece of paper and read aloud. On the charge of sexual misconduct, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of abuse of power, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Father John's mouth fell open. The judge nodded. Sentencing will be held in 1 week. Court is adjourned. The gavel slammed. It was over. Father John had fallen. 1 week later, the courtroom was packed once again. Father John stood before the judge, his wrists shackled, his priestly robes now replaced with a simple prison uniform. The judge looked at him sternly. John Okafor, you have abused your position in the most vile way possible. You have preyed on the weak, shattered families, and betrayed the very faith you claim to serve. Father John's lips tightened. For your crimes, you are sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom erupted. Cecilia felt tears sting her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. Amaka squeezed her hand. He's finally where he belongs. As Father John was led away, he turned his head. His eyes locked with Cecilia's, filled with pure hatred. This isn't over, he mouthed. But Cecilia only smiled. Yes, John. It is. And with that, he was gone. The dust was beginning to settle, but the scars remained. Cecilia sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, staring at the sky. For so long, Father John had controlled her life, her fears, her silence. But now, for the first time, she felt free. What now? Amaka asked, sitting beside her. Cecilia exhaled. We move forward. Evelyn joined them, her arm still in a sling from the injury Father John had inflicted. Do you think he'll ever accept what he did? Cecilia shook her head. Men like him never do. But that no longer mattered. Because he was behind bars. And she had her life back. The Catholic Diocese of Lagos was in chaos. Father John's trial had exposed deep corruption, cover-ups, secret bribes, ignored complaints. Parishioners were outraged. Church leaders scrambled to control the damage. Some called for reform. Others wanted the scandal buried. But the truth had already spread. Cecilia watched the news one evening as a bishop addressed the congregation. We deeply regret what has happened. The church is meant to be a place of safety, not sin. We will ensure that justice prevails. It sounded rehearsed. But at least now, they couldn't pretend anymore. Change was coming. And it had started with her. One by one, Father John's victims found their voices. Some gave interviews. Others wrote anonymous letters. For years, I thought it was my fault. Now I know better. I was afraid no one would believe me. But Cecilia showed us we're not alone. Justice has been served, but we still carry the wounds. Cecilia read every message, her heart swelling with pride and sorrow. These women had been silenced for too long. Now, they were heard. Months passed. Cecilia never thought she'd see him again. But something in her heart told her she needed closure. She arrived at the prison on a rainy afternoon, the air thick with the scent of wet concrete. The guards led her to a visiting room. And then, he was there. Father John. He looked different, his hair graying, his once proud face hollow with defeat. But his eyes, they still burned with arrogance. Come to gloat, he sneered. Cecilia shook her head. No, John. I came to let you know, I forgive you. His smirk faded. You what? I forgive you, she repeated, standing up. Not because you deserve it. But because I deserve peace. She turned and walked away, leaving him in stunned silence. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Cecilia stepped out of the prison gates and took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter, freer. Father John no longer had control over her. She had one. As she walked toward Amaka, who was waiting by the car, she smiled. How did it go? Amaka asked. Better than I expected, Cecilia replied. I finally let go. Amaka nodded. So, what now? Cecilia looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Now, we live. The church that once worshipped Father John had changed. Many members left in disgust, unwilling to trust again. But others stayed, determined to rebuild what had been broken. A new priest was appointed, one who vowed to restore faith, not betray it. The old whispers of scandal faded, replaced by new voices of hope. It was a slow process. But healing had begun. Cecilia sat in a small cafe, sipping tea. Across from her, Evelyn and Amaka laughed about something trivial. For the first time in years, she felt normal. I got accepted into law school, Evelyn announced suddenly. Cecilia's eyes widened. What? Evelyn grinned. Yeah. I want to help women like us. Women who need justice. Tears pricked Cecilia's eyes. That's amazing. Amaka raised her glass. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses. The past had shaped them. But it no longer defined them. In a dim prison cell, Father John sat alone. His once proud name was now a curse. His old allies had abandoned him. His followers had moved on. The guards led her to a visiting room. No more fine robes. No more admiration. Just silence. A guard walked by and smirked. You ain't special anymore, preacher. Father John said nothing. For the first time in his life, there was no one left to listen. Cecilia stood before a crowd of young women, her hand steady as she spoke. For years, I lived in silence, thinking my voice didn't matter. But I learned something, the truth always finds a way. The women listened, their eyes filled with hope. No one deserves to live in fear. No one deserves to be controlled. And no matter what they tell you, she paused, looking around, you are never alone. The applause was deafening. She had found her purpose. And this was just the beginning. Months passed, and life continued. One morning, Cecilia received an envelope in the mail. It was from Amaka. She opened it and gasped. A wedding invitation. I can't believe she's getting married, she muttered, smiling. The past hadn't destroyed them. They had survived. And now, they were thriving. Cecilia never thought she'd love again. But then, she met him. A kind-hearted lawyer named David. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't manipulative. He was real. And he listened. You're the strongest woman I've ever met, he told her one evening. She smiled. For the first time, she believed it. One night, Cecilia had a dream. She saw Father John, standing in the old church, staring at her. "You think you've won?" he whispered. But she wasn't afraid. "You have no power over me anymore," she told him. And when she woke up, she felt lighter than ever. Months later, the news broke. Father John had died in prison. Some said it was illness. Others whispered it was his own doing. But Cecilia? She didn't care. He was just a ghost now. The world had moved on. And so had she. Cecilia opened a small organization dedicated to helping abused women find justice. Evelyn became a lawyer. Amaka became a teacher. They turned their pain into purpose. And in doing so, they became unstoppable. Years later, Cecilia walked past the church where it all began. The building was different. The people were different. But she smiled. Because she was different, too. And she was finally free. Cecilia published a book detailing her journey. She named it The Truth Will Speak. It became a bestseller. And women everywhere found strength in her story. She had once been a victim. Now, she was a warrior. Years later, Cecilia sat with her young daughter. "Mom, what does it mean to be strong?" Cecilia smiled, brushing the child's hair. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," she said. "It's about never letting fear control you." Her daughter grinned. "Like you?" Cecilia kissed her forehead. "Exactly." Cecilia stood before a packed auditorium, preparing to speak. She had spent years fighting for justice, for truth. Now, she was living proof that healing was possible. She cleared her throat, smiling at the sea of faces before her. "I once believed that silence was safety. But I learned something: the only way to be free is to speak." The audience erupted in applause. Her story had ended. But her legacy had just begun.
In the end, the truth did not set everyone free. Some hearts were broken, some lives destroyed. And Father John? Well, you decide if justice was truly served. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more true life inspired African stories where the truth is more powerful than fiction.